Scottish folk and fairy tales, the Fisherman and the Merman. Of mermen and merwomen, many strange stories are told in the Shetland Isles. Beneath the depths of the oceans, according to these stories, an atmosphere exists adapted to the respiratory organs of certain beings, resembling in a form the human race, possessed of surpassing beauty, of limited supernatural powers, and liable to the incident of death. They dwell in a wide territory across the globe, far below the region of fishes over which the sea, like the cloudy canopy of our sky, loftily rolls, and they possess habitations constructed of the pearl and coral productions of the sea. Having lungs not adapted to a watery medium, but to the nature of atmospheric air, it would be impossible for them to pass through the volume of waters that intervenes between the submarine and the supramarine world, if it were not for extraordinary powers they inherit on entering the skin of some animal capable of existing in the sea, which they are enabled to occupy by a sort of demoniacal possession. One shape they put on is that of of an animal human above the waist, yet terminating in tail and fins of a fish. But the most favorite form is that of the larger seal, or haife fish, or for in possessing amphibious nature, they are enabled not only to exist in the ocean, but to land on some rock, where they frequently lighten themselves of their sea dress, resume their proper shape, and which we much curiosity examine the nature of the upper world belonging to the human race. Unfortunately, however, each merman or merwoman possesses but one skin, enabling the individual to ascend the seas, and if on visiting the abode of man the garb is lost, the hapless being must unavoidably become an inhabitant of the earth. The story is told of a boat's crew who landed for the purpose of attacking seals lying in the hollows of crags of one of the stacks. The men stunned a number of animals, and while they were in this state, stripped them of their skins with the fat attached to them, leaving the carcasses on the rocks. The crew were about to set off for the shore of Papastur when a tremendous swell arose and that everyone flew quickly to the boat. All succeeded in entering except one man who had imprudently lingered behind. The crew were unwilling to leave a companion to perish on the skerries, but the surge increased so fast that many unsuccessful attempts to bring the boat close into the stack, the unfortunate wight was left to his own fate. A stormy night came on, and the deserted Shetlander saw no prospect before him but that of perishing of cold and hunger, or of being washed into the sea by the breakers which threatened to dash over the rocks. At length he perceived many of the seals, who in their flight had escaped the attack of the boatmen, approach the skerry, disrobe themselves of their amphibious hides, and resume the shape of the sons and daughters of the ocean. Their first object was to assist in the recovery of their friends, who, having been stunned by clubs, while in the state had been deprived of their skins, which the flayed animals had regained their sensibility, they assumed their proper form of mermen or merwomen, and began to lament in a mournful lay, wildly accompanied by the storm that was raging about and the loss of their sea dress, which would prevent them from again enjoying their native azure atmosphere and coral mansions that lay below the deep waters of the Atlantic. But their chief lamentation was for Olavitinus, the son of Georgia, who had been stripped of his seal skin and would be forever parted from his mates, and condemned to become an outcast inhabitant of the upper world. Their song was at length broken off by observing one of the enemies viewing, with shivering limbs and looks of comfortless despair, the wild waves that dashed over the stack. Gioja immediately conceived an idea of rendering subservient to the advantage of her son the perilous situation of the man. She addressed him with mildness, proposing to carry him safe on her back across the sea to Papastur, on condition of receiving the sealskin of Olavitnius. A bargain was struck, and Gioja caused herself in her amphibious guard, but the Shetlander, alarmed at the sight of the stormy main that he was to ride through, prudently begged leave of the matron for better preservation, that he might be allowed to cut a few holes in her shoulders and flanks, in order to procure, between the skin and the flesh, a better fastening for his hands and feet. The request being complied with, the man grasped the neck of the seal, and committing himself to her care, was landed safely across at Acre Gio in Papastur, from which place he immediately repaired to a hut for drying fish at Hamnavo, where the skin was deposited, and and honorably fulfilled his part of the contract by affording Gioja the means whereby her son could again revisit his ethereal space over which the sea could spread its green mantle. The Merwife. There's a story told by an inhabitant of Unst, and walking on the sandy margin of the Vaux, saw a number of mermen and mermaids dancing by moonlight, and several of their sealskins had been strewed behind them on the ground. At his approach, they immediately fled to secure their garbs, and taking upon themselves in the form of seals, plunged immediately into the sea. But as the Shetlander perceived one skin lay close to his feet, he snatched it up and bore it swiftly away in place of concealment. On returning to the shore, he met the fairest damsel he had ever gazed his mortal eyes upon, lamenting the robbery by which she had become an exile from her submarine friends and a tenant of the upper world. Vainly she implored the restitution of her property. The man had drunk deeply of love and was inexorable, but he offered her protection beneath his roof as his betrothed spouse. The mer lady, perceiving that she must become an inhabitant of the earth, found that she could not do better than accept the offer. This strange attachment subsisted for many years, and the couple had several children. The Shetlander's love for his mer wife was unbounded, but his affection was coldly returned. The lady would often steal alone to the deserted strand, and on a signal being given, a large seal would make his appearance, with whom she would hold in an unknown tongue an anxious conference. Years thus glided by, when it happened that one of the children, in the course of his play, found concealed beneath a stack of corn a sealskin, and delighted with it as a prize, he ran with it to his mother. Her eyes glistened with rapture, and as she gazed upon it, realizing it was her own, as the means by which she could pass through the ocean that led her to her native home, she burst forth in an ecstasy of joy which was only moderated when she beheld her children, whom she was now about to leave, after hastily embracing them. She fled with all speed toward the seaside. The husband immediately returned, learned of the discovery that had taken place, and ran to overtake his wife, but only arrived in time to see her transformation into the shape completed, to see her, in the form of a seal, bound from the ledge of a rock into the sea. The large animal, the same kind with whom she'd held a secret converse, soon appeared, and evidently congratulated he in the most tender manner on her escape. But before she dived into unknown depths, she cast a parting glance at the wretched Shetlander, whose despairing looks excited in her breast a few transient feelings of commiseration. Farewell, she said to him, and may all good attend you. I loved you very well when I resided upon earth, but I always loved my first husband much better.